The small town was usually quiet in the mornings, and the young woman walked through it like she was part of the silence. Most people barely noticed her as she passed. She kept her head down, her hands tucked into her sleeves, and moved with a soft step, as if she didn't want to disturb anyone. People saw her every day, yet somehow never really saw her at all. They thought she had nothing special to offer, nothing worth paying attention to. They didn't know that inside her was a world she never dared to show. She lived in a simple home on the edge of the town, a home filled with old furniture and soft memories. Her family worked long hours, and she spent a lot of time alone, but she didn't mind. Silence was something she understood. She felt comfortable in it, even when others found it strange. She wasn't the kind of person who talked just to fill the air. She listened more than she spoke, and because of that, people assumed she had nothing to say. At school and later in daily life, people always placed her in the background. When someone described her, they would say things like, "She's quiet," or "she's shy," or "she just keeps to herself." They never said anything about what she liked, what she dreamed of, or what she hoped to become. It was as if nobody cared to ask. She tried to be comfortable with it, telling herself that it was better this way. When people looked at her and judged her, she felt small. When they ignored her, she felt invisible, and invisibility sometimes felt safer than being underestimated. Yet deep inside, she held onto a quiet dream, a dream that lived in the sound of music. Music had been part of her life since she was a child. When she was younger, she would sit on the floor beside an old radio and listen carefully to the songs that came through the speakers. She didn't always understand the words, but she understood the feeling in every note. Sometimes she tapped her fingers on the floor to match the rhythm. Other times, she hummed softly, even though she worried someone might hear. As she grew older, she realized that music made her feel alive in a way nothing else did. When she listened to it, her world lit up. When she played it, even in the smallest ways, she felt like she could speak without words. But she kept that part of herself hidden. She felt that if she tried to express this love out loud, people would laugh at her or say she wasn't good enough. One evening, she walked past the local notice board in the town square. People came there to post announcements, lost pets, small events, or anything they thought others might care about. She usually never stopped, but something bright caught her eye. It was a colorful paper pinned to the center of the board. It read, "Town Music Night Open Performance Event. Everyone welcome." Her eyes scanned the words many times. She felt a strange flutter in her chest, a mix of excitement and fear. She imagined standing on a stage, lights shining down on her as she played. She imagined the sound of her music filling the room. Then, just as quickly, she imagined the laughter, the whispers, the looks people might give her. She felt her courage shrink. She stepped back from the board, telling herself the event was not meant for someone like her. Music night was for talented people, confident people, people who knew how to stand in front of a crowd. She had never done anything like that. She hadn't even shown her music to anyone at home. Still, the thought stayed with her throughout the day. Even when she tried to forget it, it kept returning. It followed her into the evening as she prepared a simple dinner. It followed her as she washed the dishes. It followed her as she went into her small room and sat on the edge of her bed. Her room was not much, but it held the things she treasured most, a small old instrument kept in perfect condition. She took it out carefully, wiping away the dust even though she cleaned it almost every day. She sat near the window where a soft breeze came through and began to play a gentle melody. The notes floated through the air like soft whispers. She closed her eyes as she played, allowing her fingers to move the way they always did when her heart spoke through the strings. The music wrapped around her and filled the quiet room. It made the walls feel warmer, the night feel softer. This was the part of herself she protected the most, the part she never showed anyone. She played until her hands grew tired, then placed the instrument down and sighed. The thought of music night came back again. She knew she wanted to be part of it, even if the idea scared her. She wanted people to hear her music. She wanted them to know she was more than the quiet girl they ignored, but reality settled over her like a heavy blanket. She imagined standing on the stage, looking out at all the faces. She imagined her hands shaking, her voice cracking, her courage disappearing. She imagined failing. The thought made her chest tighten. Later that night, when her family returned home, tired from work, they barely noticed her quiet mood. They were used to seeing her calm and silent. She helped with some small chores, prepared tea, and listened as they talked about their day. She rarely joined in the conversation, but she enjoyed hearing their voices. After everyone settled down, she sat alone again. She wondered why she cared so much about what others thought. She wondered why she couldn't just step forward and try. She wondered why showing the world her music felt like such a big risk. The next morning came quickly. She woke up early, walked through the same small streets, and greeted the same familiar silence. People passed her as they always did, giving short nods or polite smiles. Their expressions never changed, and neither did their expectations of her. She found herself back at the notice board again. The colorful paper fluttered softly in the breeze. She stood there for a long time, staring at it. The thought of signing up still felt too big, too far out of reach, but something inside her wanted change. Something inside her was tired of hiding. Something inside her was waiting. She reached out her hand, but stopped halfway. She pulled it back quickly before anyone could see. Her face warmed with embarrassment, even though nobody was paying attention. She gave a small sigh and began to walk away. She didn't get far. A familiar voice called out behind her. It was someone from her neighborhood, someone who had known her since she was small. They smiled warmly at her, asking if she had seen the notice. She nodded silently. They asked if she planned to join, their voice filled with genuine curiosity and simple kindness. Her heart beat faster. She didn't know what to say. She didn't want to reveal her dream, and she didn't want to lie either. So she just shrugged, trying to appear neutral. Her neighbor gave a soft laugh and said, Sometimes the quiet ones have the loudest dreams." The words struck her deeply. She didn't know if the neighbor meant anything special by it, but to her it felt like someone had peeked into her heart. She didn't answer. But the thought stayed with her the rest of the day as she moved through her usual routine. The idea grew stronger inside her. Maybe she didn't need to be as brave as she imagined. Maybe she just needed to take one small step. Maybe she only needed to try. That night, she played her music again. But this time, the melody sounded different. It didn't just fill the room, it filled her with the feeling that she was meant for something more. Something she had been avoiding for too long. She looked at her instrument for a long moment. Then she looked at the window, where the night sky shimmered softly. She imagined herself on that stage again, but this time she imagined it differently. She imagined being scared. Yes. But she also imagined pushing through that fear. She imagined people listening, really. Listening, she imagined them hearing something beautiful. She imagined them finally seeing her the next morning. She rose with more determination than she had felt in years. She walked through the town again, the same streets, the same people, but something inside her had changed. She reached the notice board, looked at the paper, and took a deep breath. This time she didn't hesitate. She reached forward and signed her name. Her hand trembled slightly. But the moment her name touched the page, she felt something shift inside her, something small, but powerful. She stepped back from the board and stared at what she had done. She didn't know if she was ready. She didn't know if she would be good enough, and she didn't know how people would react. But she had taken the first step. And sometimes, the first step is the hardest one. As she walked away, she felt her heartbeat quicken, not with fear alone, but with possibility. The world hadn't noticed her yet, but soon. They would. The days after she signed up for the music event felt different. Something had shifted inside her. She still walked quietly through town, still kept her head down. But there was a small spark in her chest that hadn't been there before. It was a mix of excitement and fear, like standing on the edge of something new without knowing what waited below. She tried to remind herself that nobody expected anything from her. That was comforting and frightening at the same time. At home, she acted as usual, so that nobody would notice the nervous energy she carried. She helped her family, did her chores, and stayed in her quiet corner. She didn't tell anyone she had signed up for the event. The thought of saying it out loud made her too shy. She wanted to keep it a secret until she was sure she could do it. That evening, she sat in her room with her instrument resting on her lap. She traced her fingers along the strings without playing anything yet. Her heart was heavy with thoughts. She wondered if she had made a mistake. Maybe she had acted too quickly. Maybe she wasn't ready, but then she remembered how it felt to finally sign her name. That small moment of bravery still whispered to her even now. She began to play. Soft notes filled the air, rising and falling like a gentle breath. The room warmed with the sound. For a few moments, she forgot the fear. She forgot the people who might judge her. She forgot everything except the melody flowing through her hands as she played. She didn't notice someone passing by her door. A light footstep stopped, then slowly moved closer. Her younger cousin, who often visited their home after school, stood quietly in the hallway, listening. They didn't usually talk much, but her cousin adored her gentle nature. He often watched her from afar, curious about why she spent so much time alone. He had never heard her play before. Tonight, he happened to walk by at the right moment. He listened without moving, afraid that any sound would break the beautiful moment. The music felt peaceful and honest, like it came from a place deep inside her that she never showed to others. When she finished, the last note trembled softly and faded. She let out a quiet breath, unaware that anyone had heard. Then a small voice said, "That was beautiful." She jumped slightly, turning toward the door with wide eyes. Her cousin stood there, smiling shyly. Her cheeks warmed with embarrassment, and she quickly tried to hide her instrument. But he shook his head. "You play really well," he said softly. "Why don't you play in front of people?" She looked down at her hands. "I'm not that good," she whispered. "You are," he replied without hesitation. "I didn't know you could do that." "You should show them." His encouragement surprised her. She wasn't used to hearing such words from anyone. She mumbled a soft thank you, and he smiled again before walking away, leaving her alone with her thoughts. That small moment made her heart flutter. Someone had heard her hand hadn't laughed. Instead, he had admired her. That gave her a bit of courage. Over the next few days, she practiced more seriously, not just for herself, but for the event. She played early mornings before the sun rose and continued late into the night. Sometimes her hands cramped, but she didn't stop. She wanted to make sure she wouldn't freeze or panic when the day came. She didn't expect anyone else to hear her again. But life has a way of surprising people when they least expect it. One afternoon, while she played a soft tune, a gentle knock came at her door. She stopped immediately, worried someone might complain about the noise. But when she opened the door, she saw her neighbor, the same one who had spoken to her at the notice board. "I heard music from the hallway," the neighbor said with a warm smile. "It sounded lovely. Was that you?" She nodded awkwardly. The neighbor's eyes lit up. "You should sign up for music night," they said encouragingly. "I already did," she answered quietly. The neighbor clapped their hands together with excitement. "That's wonderful. I'm so glad you're going to perform." Her face flushed, but this time it wasn't from embarrassment. It was from a small sense of pride. People were hearing her music one by one, and each time, nobody reacted the way she feared. After the neighbor left, she sat on her bed and let out a breath she didn't realize she was holding. Maybe she wasn't as unnoticeable as she thought. Maybe people saw more in her than she gave them credit for. The next day, she needed to visit the local community hall to check the practice schedule for performers. She walked there slowly, feeling her nerves rise with every step. She pushed the door open quietly and entered the dimly lit room. Inside, a few performers were already rehearsing. They were confident, cheerful, and loud. Everything she was not. She watched them from a distance, feeling small. They seemed so sure of themselves, laughing and joking as they practiced. Meanwhile, she just stood in the corner, unsure where she even belonged. Someone noticed her standing alone and came over. It was one of the event volunteers. "You here to rehearse?" they asked kindly. She nodded. "Don't worry," the volunteer assured her. "Everyone starts somewhere. Just find a spot and warm up." She thanked them softly and went to an empty corner. She took out her instrument, but her hands shook slightly. She felt all the other performers' eyes on her, even though they were busy with their own practice. She imagined them judging her, wondering why she was even there. She tried to steady her breath and began to play. The first few notes came out shaky, but she kept going. Her hands slowly found their rhythm. She closed her eyes to block out everything else. When she opened them again, she noticed one of the other performers staring at her, surprised. She froze immediately, expecting a rude remark or a laugh. But instead, the performer said, "You're actually really good, actually." She repeated softly, unsure how to take the comment. "I mean, I didn't expect that," the performer admitted. "You're really quiet. I didn't think you played like that." She didn't know how to respond, but the performer smiled, nodding in approval before walking away. Even though the words were casual, they meant more to her than the performer realized. People were beginning to notice her, piece by piece. Not because she was loud, not because she tried to impress them, but because her music spoke for her. That night, when she returned home, she felt a mix of nerves and hope. She knew the event was getting closer, and she still wasn't sure she was ready. But she also knew something had changed. She had stepped out of the shadows, even if only a little. After everyone went to sleep, she sat by her window again. She played slowly, carefully, letting each note carry her emotions. The breeze outside was cool, brushing against her face. She felt the weight of the upcoming performance pressing on her shoulders. She thought about the people who had hurt her recently. Her cousin, her neighbor, the performer at rehearsal. None of them had laughed. None of them had judged her harshly. They had listened. They had encouraged her, even in small ways. She realized something she had never let herself believe before. Maybe she wasn't invisible. Maybe she had something worth sharing. She played a brighter melody this time, letting her heart guide her hands. She imagined the crowd at music night. She imagined standing on stage under the lights. She imagined the moment before the first note, the silence, the suspense, the fear. But she also imagined the moment when she would start playing. A moment where everything inside her would come alive. A moment where every doubt would fade. A moment where her music would finally be heard. She practiced until her fingers hurt. She didn't stop. She wanted to be ready. She wanted her music to be strong enough to carry her through her fear. When she finally set her instrument down, the sky outside was dark and full of stars. She looked out at them and felt a quiet comfort. Stars never tried to shine loudly. They simply shined because that's what they were meant to do. Maybe she was like that too. The next morning, she woke up before the sun. She felt tired, but she also felt determined. The event was only days away now. She knew she had to give everything she could. Throughout the day, she practiced in short bursts, focusing on each part of her performance. She worked on her timing, her breathing, and her confidence. Sometimes she stumbled. Sometimes she improved. Sometimes she doubted herself all over again. But she never stopped. When the evening came, her cousin visited again. He peeked into her room, curious, and asked, "Can you play that song again? The one from before?" She hesitated, but his hopeful smile made her nod. She played. The notes came out warm and steady. Her cousin sat quietly, listening with wide eyes, as if he was hearing a secret meant just for him. When she finished, he clapped softly and said, "You're going to be amazing." She smiled, a little one of the rare, true smiles she rarely showed. That small moment filled her heart with hope once more. Part 2 ends with her sitting in her room late at night, holding her instrument close. She knows the event is almost here, and even though she's scared, she feels ready to face what comes next. She knows this is her chance to step out of the quiet world she has lived in for so long. She knows that soon her music will speak for her, and when it does, people will finally listen. The days leading up to the event felt heavier than she expected. Every morning she woke up with a tight feeling in her chest, a reminder of what she had signed herself up for. She tried to ignore it and continue with her normal routine. But the thought of standing on a stage in front of people kept following her everywhere. It didn't matter where she went or what she was doing. Her mind always found a way back to that one moment she feared most. Still, she kept practicing. She had come too far to stop now. Each evening she sat with her instrument and played until her hands grew tired. Sometimes she played with confidence, sometimes with nerves shaking her fingers, but she never allowed herself to quit. She knew the only way to face fear was to walk straight into it. One of the afternoons before the event, the practice hall was buzzing with people. She went there again to rehearse, hoping she could get used to the space. The moment she stepped inside, she felt dozens of voices echoing around the large room. Some performers were warming up, others were chatting loudly, and a few were showing off their routines. She walked quietly to her usual corner, hoping nobody would notice her. But unlike the first time, several people recognized her now. Some nodded politely, others gave soft smiles. A few looked curious, remembering the gentle music they had heard from her last time. She tried to focus on tuning her instrument. But every little sound felt louder than it was. Her heartbeat felt loud. Her breathing felt loud. Even her thoughts felt loud. She took a slow breath and closed her eyes. "Just play," she whispered to herself. "Just play like you do at home." She began her rehearsal. The first note came out weak, but she pushed through it. Her fingers found the melody little by little. Soon the shaky notes smoothed into something softer, something more true to her heart. For a moment, she forgot the hall, the people, and the fear. But when she opened her eyes, she found a small group of performers watching her. Their faces were blank at first, then slowly shifted into expressions of interest. One of them leaned closer to another and whispered something she couldn't hear. Her stomach tightened. She stopped playing immediately. "Why did you stop?" one of them asked. "That was really nice." She didn't respond. She only looked down at her hands, wishing they would stop trembling. "You know," another performer added, "I didn't expect you to sound like that. You're always so quiet. I didn't think you were that good." Comment wasn't meant to hurt her, but it still struck her heart in a strange way. She wasn't sure whether to feel complimented or uncomfortable. Before she could think of a response, the event volunteer from the other day approached. "You played gently," they said with a kind smile. "Don't let your nerves stop you. Your music deserves the space you give it." She nodded slowly, appreciating the warmth in their voice. She tried to play again, and though the nerves still lingered, she managed to finish her practice. When she left the hall, she felt drained, but also relieved. On her way home, she walked through the narrow streets she had known her entire life. They were familiar and safe, unlike the stage she would soon stand on. She paused at a small bridge near her neighborhood and leaned on the railing. The water below moved softly, carrying the reflections of the sky. She closed her eyes and breathed deeply. Somewhere inside her, a battle was happening. One side told her she was ready, that she had worked hard and deserved to be heard. The other side whispered doubt, fear that she would mess up, fear that people would judge her, fear that she would fail. When she reached home, her cousin was there waiting for her. His face lit up when he saw her enter. "Did you practice today?" he asked excitedly. She nodded. "Can you play something for me again?" he asked hopefully. She hesitated for a moment, but then she smiled softly and nodded. She took out her instrument and sat on the floor. Her cousin sat across from her, legs crossed, eyes full of expectation. She played, and for the first time that day, the music came easily. Her fingers moved without fear. Her heart felt lighter. When she finished, her cousin clapped happily. "You play better every day," he said. "You're going to be great at the event." "I know it." His words comforted her more than he knew. That night, she couldn't sleep. She lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to the soft hum of the night outside. Her mind replayed every moment of the day, every doubt, every small encouragement. She wondered what the other performers truly thought of her. She wondered if she would embarrass herself. She wondered if her music would be good enough. The next morning was quiet. She woke early and went outside before anyone else in the house was awake. The air was cool, and the sky had a soft glow. She walked slowly along the empty street, her thoughts swirling. She reached the old park where she used to sit as a child. She found the same bench she had always liked, covered in tiny scratches carved by kids over the years. She sat down and let her thoughts drift. A soft breeze brushed her hair. The town was peaceful in the early hours. She wished she could carry this calmness with her into the event. As she sat there, she heard footsteps approaching. She looked up to see her neighbor, the one who had encouraged her earlier walking by. Up early again? They asked with a gentle smile. She nodded. Nervous? The neighbor asked kindly. She didn't need to answer. Her expression said everything. The neighbor sat beside her on the bench. You know something? Being nervous doesn't mean you can't do it. It means you care. And caring is good. It means you'll give your best. They paused for a moment, then added, and from what I've heard, your best is already something special. Her eyes softened. She looked at her hands, then gave a small smile. When she returned home, she felt a little steadier. She went straight to her room and began practicing again. This time, though her hands still shook, she didn't let the fear take control. As the event drew closer, the whole town seemed to buzz with excitement. Posters were put up around the streets. People talked about the performers they were expecting to see. Some mentioned the confident singers, the talented dancers, and the musicians who performed every year. Nobody talked about her, and strangely, that gave her comfort. She didn't want extra attention. She just wanted one chance to show who she really was. The day before the event, she visited the hall one last time to make sure she was ready. When she stepped inside, something new happened. A group of performers who had seen her practice waved at her. You're here. One of them called out. She paused, unsure if they were talking to her. Yeah, you. One of them laughed lightly. Come practice with us. We want to hear your piece again. Her heart skipped. She didn't expect anyone to ask that. She walked slowly toward them. I've been telling people about you, one performer said. About how quietly you came in, and then surprised everyone when you started playing. Her face warmed. I didn't mean to surprise anyone, she said softly. Well, you did, another performer added. In a good way. So for the first time, she practiced in a small circle of people instead of alone. At first she felt stiff and awkward, but as she played, they listened respectfully. When she finished, they clapped. Not sarcastically, not carelessly, but with genuine appreciation. One performer even said, you have this calm vibe, but your music makes people feel things. That's rare. Their words settled inside her gently like warm sunlight. That evening, she walked home slower than usual, replaying their encouragement in her mind. She felt nervous still, but the fear didn't feel as heavy as before. Now there was something else mixed with it, hope. She knew the next day would be the biggest challenge she had ever faced. She also knew she wasn't alone anymore. People had started noticing her, and they weren't dismissing her. They were waiting to hear her. When she reached home, her cousin ran to her with excitement. Tomorrow is the day. Are you ready? She took a slow breath. I think so, she replied. He grinned and gave her a thumbs up. I'll be cheering for you. That night, she sat on her bed with her instrument beside her. The quiet room felt different, full of emotions she couldn't name. She touched the strings gently, but didn't play. Her heart was too full. She knew that the next time she touched these strings, it would be in front of everyone. She lay down and closed her eyes, trying to sleep. But sleep didn't come easily. Her mind replayed everything she had worked for, every small step she had taken, every moment she had doubted her worth. She whispered to herself, just try, just try. And with that thought, she drifted into a light sleep. The morning of the event arrived. She woke early, the sky still heavy with the last traces of night. Her heart thumped with fear and excitement. She got ready slowly, carefully. Her hands trembled as she packed her instrument. Her family noticed her nervousness. They didn't know about the event yet, but they sensed something different in her. Her cousin, however, understood everything. He gave her a silent nod of support. She stepped outside, breathing in the cool morning air. Today was the day she would face the world. She walked toward the community hall, each step echoing with the weight of her dream. She knew people would be watching. She knew whispers might rise. She knew her hands might shake, but she also knew something else. She had worked for this. She had earned this. She wasn't the invisible girl anymore. She was someone with a voice made of music, and today, she would let the world hear it when she woke up that morning. She felt as if her whole body was heavier than usual. It was the day she had been preparing for, the day she had tried to stay brave for. But now that it had finally arrived, every step felt slower. She sat on the edge of her bed for a long moment, staring at the soft light coming through the window. It was warm, gentle, almost comforting, but inside her chest, everything felt tight. Her hands were cold even though the weather outside was warm. She took a slow breath, but it did little to calm her. All night she had twisted and turned, imagining the worst possible things that could happen. She imagined forgetting the notes, getting stuck in the middle of the performance, her voice shaking so badly that people would whisper and laugh. The people who doubted her would feel proven right, and that thought alone made her stomach twist. She tried to shake off these thoughts as she walked to the small kitchen area where her mother was already awake. Her mother looked at her with soft eyes and asked if she had slept well. She didn't want to worry her, so she simply nodded. But her mother could always read her face, even when she said nothing. With a gentle touch on her shoulder, her mother reminded her that fear didn't mean she was weak. It only meant she cared deeply about what she was doing. Those words helped a little. Not enough to erase all the fear, but enough to give her something steady to hold on to. She prepared her things quietly. She put her instrument in its case with so much care, as if it were a fragile treasure. She checked it twice, then 3 times, because the idea of forgetting something important made her even more anxious. When she finally stepped outside, the morning air touched her skin, cool and fresh, and she let the breeze wash over her. The walk to the event hall felt longer than she remembered. Every step forward felt like a reminder that the moment she had been hiding from was getting closer. People passed by her on the street, some carrying their own instruments or costumes, some chatting and laughing. She saw familiar faces, many of whom didn't even notice her. A few did, and those few gave her a small nod or half-smile, the kind that didn't quite reach their eyes. It wasn't mean, but it wasn't warm either. It was a look that said they didn't expect much from her. She tried not to take it personally. She had been invisible to most people all her life. She was used to it. But today, it felt different. Today, their doubts stung more because she would be standing on a stage in front of them soon, when she entered the backstage area. The room buzzed with a mixture of excitement and nervous chatter. Other performers were practicing, stretching their hands, humming warm-up notes, talking loudly to friends, or trying to control their nerves. She walked quietly to a small corner and sat down. Her hands trembled slightly as she opened her case and took out her instrument. She held it gently, trying to remind herself that she wasn't doing this for applause or approval. She was doing this because music had always been the one place where she felt free. But even that thought struggled to stay strong as more people walked past her, whispering or glancing in her direction. Some didn't mean any harm, but a few whispers carried a tone she recognized curiosity mixed with doubt. She heard someone ask who she was. Another person replied, "I don't know. I've never seen her perform before." Another voice added quietly, "She looks too nervous." She lowered her eyes and pretended she hadn't heard anything. A girl around her age sat next to her. She didn't know her, but the girl's presence felt peaceful. The girl smiled softly and asked if she was ready. She nodded again, though she wasn't. The girl told her it was normal to be scared. "Everyone gets scared," she said. "It's what happens after you step out there that matters." Her words were simple, but kind, and kindness always had a way of making things feel a little lighter. Minutes passed slowly. She practiced a few quiet notes, barely loud enough to be heard. Her hands still shook, but when the notes touched the air, something inside her shifted. The sound felt familiar, warm, almost like an old friend trying to remind her that she had done this many times before. Still, fear stayed with her. It sat on her shoulders, it held her breath captive, but she didn't get up or run away. She stayed. That alone was a small victory. The organizer came into the room, calling names one by one. Each performer walked out with a mix of nerves and excitement. She watched as the girl who had spoken to her earlier went out. She listened to the applause after her performance. It was loud and cheerful, and for a moment, she wondered if she could ever make people clap like that. Then her name was called. Her heart jumped. Her fingers tightened around her instrument. Her legs felt weak, but she stood up anyway. The walk to the stage entrance felt like walking through a dream where everything was slow and quiet. She could hear the faint sound of the crowd on the other side of the curtain. It was strange. She had imagined this moment many times, but now that it was here, her mind felt empty. She wasn't thinking about mistakes. She wasn't thinking about people laughing. She wasn't even thinking about the whispers that had followed her all morning. She was only thinking about the stage. The stage was where she would finally show. It's a part of herself she had hidden for so long. A staff member nodded at her, signaling that it was time. She stepped forward, and the curtain lifted. The lights hit her immediately, bright and warm, making it hard to see the faces in the audience. But she didn't need to see them to feel their attention. The room was filled with people waiting, watching, expecting something they weren't sure she could give. Her hands were shaking. She took a breath, but it didn't steady her. She closed her eyes for a brief moment and pictured her room at home. The quiet nights, the worn-out videos she learned from, the way she would play when nobody was there to judge her. She pictured the one person who believed in her, the one who insisted she could do this. When she opened her eyes, she didn't feel fearless, but she felt ready enough. She lifted her instrument. The hall grew silent. The kind of silence that feels heavy, waiting, unsure. She began to play. The first note was soft, a little unsteady. Her heart raced. She felt like she might lose her breath, but she didn't stop. She took another breath, and the next note came out clearer. Then another, and soon the music began to grow. It was gentle at first, like a soft whisper moving across the room. People leaned forward. The ones who had doubted her sat straighter in their seats, their earlier whispers fading into surprise. Her hands still shook a little, but her music didn't. Once she found her rhythm, the fear loosened its grip. The sound flowed from her in a way she hadn't expected. She wasn't just playing notes. She was speaking through them. Every moment she had spent practicing in the quiet of her room. Every late night, every small hope she had hidden inside her heart, it all came together now. The room, once filled with doubt, now felt still, as if everyone was holding their breath. She could feel the shift with every passing moment. The music grew stronger, smoother, richer. Her hands moved with confidence she didn't know she had. Her heart, once heavy with fear, now felt light. The lights on the stage no longer felt blinding. Instead, they felt warm on her skin, and for the first time that day, she felt free. When the final note finally drifted into silence, the whole room stayed quiet for a heartbeat. Then another, and in that pause she wondered if she had failed. But before she could take another breath, the hall exploded into applause. It was loud. Loud enough to make her chest ache. People stood. Some clapped with wide smiles. Some looked shocked, almost embarrassed for doubting her. The girl who had spoken to her backstage was standing too, clapping with bright eyes that seemed proud. She lowered her instrument slowly, almost unsure of what to do next. She had imagined applause before, but never anything like this. She felt her throat tighten, not from fear, but from emotion. For the first time in her life, she wasn't invisible. She took a small step back, then another, until she was off stage and back in the dim backstage area. Her heart was still racing, but now it raced for a different reason. People backstage looked at her with surprise and admiration. Some gave her quick nods of respect. Others said they hadn't expected that kind of performance. She didn't know what to say. She just smiled softly. Everything felt different now. The fear that had followed her all morning was gone. In its place was a quiet sense of pride, small, warm, and steady. She had done it. She had shown them what she had hidden deep inside herself, and this was only the beginning. When she stepped out of the backstage area, she felt as if the world around her had changed somehow, even though nothing looked different. The hall still had the same lights, the same people, the same sounds, but everything felt brighter to her. It was as if the air itself had softened and opened its arms to her. Her chest rose and fell quickly, not from fear anymore, but from the overwhelming rush of everything that had just happened. She kept walking slowly, trying to understand the applause that was still echoing faintly in her ears. It didn't feel real. It felt like she had imagined it, like a dream she might wake up from at any moment. But then she saw people turning toward her as she passed, their faces glowing with surprise and admiration. Some smiled openly, some nodded with respect, and some simply stared, as if unsure how to react after doubting her for so long. She didn't know where to look. She had spent years trying not to be noticed, and now so many eyes were on her. It felt strange, but not uncomfortable. It felt new. The girl who had spoken to her backstage earlier walked up to her with a big smile. She told her that she had done something beautiful, something powerful. She said she had never seen someone so quiet walk onto a stage and change the entire room like that. Hearing those words made her chest tighten again, but this time with emotion that felt warm instead of frightening. She thanked her softly, almost shyly. The girl gave her a gentle squeeze on the shoulder before moving on, but that small gesture stayed with her. It reminded her that sometimes people see more in you than you see in yourself. Before she could take another step, a group of older performers came toward her. These were people who had been performing for years, people she had admired from a distance. They had always seemed confident and strong, the kind of people she thought she could never stand beside. Yet here they were, telling her that her performance had touched them. One of them said that the way she played felt honest, as if the music had been pulled straight from her heart. Another said they hadn't expected it, but were glad they were wrong. She wasn't sure how to respond. She was used to being overlooked, not praised. Her hands trembled again, but not with fear. She felt moved in a way she had never felt before. All the nights she practiced in secret, all the times she doubted herself, all the moments she felt small at, all felt distant now, like a different life. When she finally stepped outside the building, the evening light wrapped around her like a soft blanket. The sun was dipping behind the buildings, painting the sky with shades of gold and orange. The street was quieter than before, and the calmness helped her breathe easier. Her mother was waiting for her near the entrance. The moment her mother saw her, her eyes filled with emotion. She didn't rush toward her or speak loudly. She simply walked up to her and pulled her into a warm embrace. That embrace said everything: pride, love, relief, and admiration, all mixed together. She rested her head on her mother's shoulder for a moment, feeling a comfort she had needed all day. When they stepped apart, her mother wiped a tear from the corner of her eye and told her she did something brave, something many people never find the courage to do. Hearing that made her heart swell. She whispered that she had been so scared, and her mother smiled gently, saying that everyone is scared before doing something important. But she still did it. They walked home slowly, talking softly about the day. Her mother asked her how she felt on stage. She said she felt terrified at first, but then something inside her had opened up once she began to play. She told her mother that for the first time, she felt like she belonged somewhere, not just in her room, not just in the quiet corners where no one saw her, but in a place where people were watching, listening, and feeling something from what she created. Her mother listened with a smile that didn't fade once. When they reached home, her younger cousin ran up to her with shining eyes, saying that she had watched the performance from the audience and couldn't believe how amazing she was. She said she wanted to be like her when she grew up. Hearing that made her laugh softly, something she rarely did so openly. Later that night, after everyone had gone to bed, she sat in her room with the lights dimmed. Her instrument rested on her lap, and she gently touched its smooth surface. She wasn't practicing now. She was simply sitting with it, letting the events of the day settle in her heart. The applause, the smiles, the warm words, they all felt unreal, yet they were real. She had lived them. She had earned them. She took a deep breath and let it out slowly. For so long, she had believed she was too quiet, too shy, too unsure to ever stand out. She thought people would always look past her. But today had shown her a different truth. She wasn't invisible. She had something to offer. Something that could move people. Something that came from a place deep inside her that she had always been afraid to share. And now that she had shared it, she realized she wanted to keep going. The next morning, she woke up with a sense of calm confidence she had never felt before. It wasn't loud or bold. It was quiet, steady, like the soft beat of a drum. When she walked outside, she felt lighter, as if a heavy weight had finally been lifted. As she made her way through the neighborhood, people she barely knew smiled at her. Someone even stopped her to say they had been at the event and had been amazed by her performance. Their words were warm, genuine. She thanked them politely, feeling a bit shy, but also grateful. She had never been the center of attention, but now she felt something new growing inside her, a sense of belonging. A sense that she had finally stepped into a part of herself she had been hiding for far too long. Later that week, the event organizer contacted her. They said they wanted her to perform again at a small community gathering coming up soon. When she read the message, she froze for a moment. The old fear tried to creep in, whispering doubts, but this time, the fear didn't win. She typed a short reply, accepting the invitation. When she told her mother later that evening, her mother hugged her again. Her cousin cheered loudly from the next room, and she stood there smiling, realizing that this path she had taken, this brave step into the light, was leading her somewhere she had never imagined before. On the night of the gathering, she stood backstage once again. The room was smaller, the audience fewer, but she felt the same quiet nervousness. It wasn't the painful, overwhelming fear she once knew. This time, it was a gentle reminder that she was doing something important, something she loved. When she stepped onto the stage and began to play, the music flowed out of her with a calm strength. The audience listened with soft smiles and warm attention. She felt connected to them, to the room, to herself. As she finished, and the applause rose again, she realized something she had never understood before. She didn't need to be loud to be heard. She didn't need to change who she was to make people feel something. All she needed was the courage to share her gift. In the days that followed, more opportunities appeared. A local music teacher reached out to her, offering to help her grow her skills. A small group of students asked if she could guide them on weekends. Her world, once so quiet and small, began to expand. She accepted each new chance with grateful steps, moving forward at her own pace. She remained soft-spoken, gentle, thoughtful. But the difference was that now, she believed in herself. The people who once doubted her looked at her differently now. Not with surprise anymore, but with respect. And she carried that respect quietly, without pride or show. She didn't need to boast. She didn't need to prove anything anymore. She had already proven something the moment she stepped onto that stage. She had shown them and herself what she was capable of. And as time went on, she continued to grow, not for applause or recognition, but because music had always lived inside her, waiting for the moment she was brave enough to let the world hear it. That moment had come. And now, she would never go back to hiding. Her journey was just beginning, and she walked forward with quiet confidence, knowing that even if people didn't believe in her at first, the music always would.